We didn't have to change the truth. You just had to pick what parts of the story you were going to tell, right? So there's a whole beginning of the book where you get to see him as a young boy and see all of that. And then there's the actual story of what they went through. And then there's sort of later in life. And what was really interesting to us was the period of time that they were at the University of Washington and uh, taking on uh, sort of three different groups, taking on the seniors first, and then taking on the rich, kind of fraternity kind of kids, and then taking on the Nazis. So we felt like that was a really exciting time to do. So we had to focus, got to understand what the ins and outs of the actual rowing entail, got to understand what speed is like by getting in closer. As opposed to being far back. When you're far back, nothing looks fast. So you could use that as your palette in a way to, that showed us some of the ways you have to care about the people who are rowing. But rowing at the turn of the last century, particularly in the 1920s, was the number one watched sport, meaning attended sport in the United States. So there were 100,000 people at these things. So it was so it has been a very big sport, and it still is a big sport, but it's kind of, it's not as big as football and baseball and basketball and all that now. So it's just about trying to show the excitement and remind people of what something was and how exciting that was. This element that what makes it so special is that they did it out of necessity. They're rowing because they wanted to stay in college, and that was the only way they could stay in college was during the Depression, and they were very poor. And these guys were lumberjacks and worked on the river, and they were strong, tough kids, but they were poor, and it gave them an edge because if they lost or if they didn't make the team or if they didn't make the cut, they probably weren't going to get an education. They weren't going to get ahead. They weren't going to make a life for themselves and their families. So the stakes were much higher for them, and so it drives their story, and I think it drives our narrative too. It was really important for us to get rowing right because that's something that you haven't really seen in movies. It's funny, but it hasn't been seen where you can see them all in exact, in the perfect form, with the swing as they call it. And it's hard to get actors to do that, right? You have to really train for it. So the first thing we did when we cast the actors was we said, if you're not athletic, then we're going to have to let you go. And we don't want to do that. So, let's have an honest discussion of whether or not you guys can do that. It was hard. It's a hard gig. Because, when we go out to shoot, when these guys row in a race, they row for, 10 minutes. And when they train for a couple of hours out on the water. We're shooting for 11 hours a day, and they got to be out there rowing. So it's a really physically demanding part for all these guys. They all lost a ton of weight, and they all look great.
We had coaches that were training them. They were doing 2 sessions a day, morning sessions and afternoon sessions. They were doing weight training and cardio, and I mean, it was as if they were training to be rowers on a college team. And to their credit,
And
about
to their trainers'
and
credit.
to the trainers' credit, of course, about 4 weeks later, we went back out there and they were rowing. They were rowing as a team, and then as we started shooting, they kept practicing.
Yeah, we had they would finish shooting and they would have to go practice because there's a lot of the movie that isn't on the water. So we'd shoot and go, get out, go rowing. But it worked for us because by the time we got to that final race, which we sort of shot in order. So by the time we got to the race in Germany, our kids could keep up with. They couldn't beat any of the professionals who were rowing alongside them, but they could stay in the game with them.
Because what you don't want to do is, shoot a close up of their face and then
cut
to the Y
doubles.
shot and it's doubles, and you want to see that it's the boys.
Mm-hmm. The thing that was amazing about those guys, like the real guys, was that they at the end of the race got to 40, 42. That was just unheard of, to go that fast at that point in the race. Our kids could get sort of consistently and really at a good pace at 34, 36, where you go, oh, they look like they're racing. Grant and I all of us have done a military movie or two where it's like, okay, you're going to go train and spend time and learn. It always helps in some way, whatever way. And, the idea is you want to get to a place where if you're in a scene together that you don't have to look at the other one to know what they're doing, and there's that. So they were very confident of each other and comfortable with one another, and those matter. That makes a big difference.
You sort of hit it on the head. I mean, he comes to rowing only out of need. Like he just wants a place to work and a place to sleep so he can go to school, go to college, and make something of himself. And so rowing was just a means to an end for him. So once he started to row, and once he got involved with this coach and these boys, and Pocock and the building of the boats, he was infected by it, and that kind of informs how he is in the rest of the film. He becomes one of the great rowers of all time.
I think also what happens is that these guys, because they grew up in the Depression and because his father left him when he was 14 years old, I think all of them, they were poor. They learned to fend for themselves at a very young age. And suddenly they're part of a team that fending for yourself doesn't work. You actually have to rely on the guy in front and the guy behind you. And that makes a big difference for them. And so one of the main stories of this film is about being able to be part of a team, not that this only works if we all do it together. It doesn't work on your own. And I think that was the lesson he had to learn. I think a lot of those guys had to learn, because I think that was they were young and poor and hungry, and the coach Ulbrichtson had to teach them how to channel that into working together, not by themselves. And that's what Ulbrichtson did beautifully. Callum's athletic, and he's a really wonderful actor, and he's kind of always been, for the last few years, been kind of around the edges of stardom, in a way, around the edges of having something really pop for him. And it felt like this felt right for him. We were really excited for him to do it. And it just, from the minute he came in, we felt like we had the right guy. He's the jockey on the horse. He tells you how fast to go. He steers the boat. He's the one who's, he's the captain of the ship.
Yeah.
That's his job.
He's like the coach on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. He gave a great audition.
Yeah,
he gave a great audition, and we really thought he could do a great job. And he's a terrific kid. He got engaged while he was there in England.
Deceptively hard part.
We
thought it would be easy to cast that part, and though there are a lot of terrific actors that came in to read for it, I don't know what the quality is, and it took a while. Actually, it was the last thing that we cast, and finally we were like, oh yeah, he's the right guy for it.
Mm-hmm. He's a man with his back up against the wall. He hasn't won at this point. He's won as a actual rower, as an individual rower, but he hasn't won as a coach. And he is up against very rich schools, and they're not a rich school. And so they're working with supplies that are subpar. They don't have the kind of recruiting. They don't have any of those kind of things. And his job's on the line. It's a depression, and all those Coach Bowles, all those coaches, we do a scene about it. They go, I need this job. I mean, this was a time that was, we were at 30% unemployment. This was a time where eating was a worry. So they needed this job. And if they don't win, they're going to lose the job. So his back is against the wall for many reasons. There's pride involved. Obviously, he ended up being the coach there for a long, long time and had great successes. So he is a legendary coach. And that's why having such a wonderful actor in Joel there made a big difference. Joel comes to the party with a lot of gravitas already and a lot of class. And so he didn't have to do much to make us as an audience trust him and want to fight for him. Everything's slowed down. I mean, I did Perfect Storm. I knew what I was getting into. Everything's just, it's like, try running through your swimming pool. Everything is just slower. So, you can't just say, okay, well, let's line up 8 boats across with 8 guys, 9 guys in each of them, and start the race, because there's a current. So the boats all start moving around, and they're not in straight lines. And
our boats are moving.
And our boats are moving. If the wind blows, everything's moving around. You're constantly moving. There is not one thing about shooting on the water that's fun, but it requires planning every shot, every single shot out. And there was Grant and I had to come up with, as we started doing camera tests, we had to start looking at um, the dynamics of shooting in the water because it's really tricky. You know, you, let's say you just have your one thin little boat with your 9 guys in it. First of all, the oars are, 20 feet on either side. So it's very wide. It's also super long.
And you can't get so close.
So you can't get very close to it. You're on a boat next to it, but you can't get anywhere near in front of it or to the side of it because you create a wake and you would capsize it. So you're on a long arm, but you still need it to be dynamic. So you can't be on a long arm with a wide angle lens. And it was all about how do you make these shots dynamic? Because, just following rowing, unless you're a rowing enthusiast, is not exciting. And so you had to find ways to make it dynamic. And that was a math we had to come up with. And we
Took us
worked
about a week to
yeah,
finally
of
go,
really, we shot
"Oh."
a few things where it didn't work. And we're like, not exciting. And so it required that. And it required a style of editing that I'm not used to as well, which is a much faster pace of cutting. It's a true love story. And we were looking for even though it's later than that, we were looking for like a 1950s movie starlet. We were looking for like Elizabeth Taylor in A Place in the Sun, more like, or Sandra Dee. We were looking for somebody there's an innocence to, but isn't a pushover. And Hadley came in and read, and we were just blown away. I can't explain to you how impressed we are with her as an actress. She can do anything, and she was so good in the film, and she was a great person to have around the set too. We had to screen it for the author of the book.
Yeah. And we
Which
had
is-
some of our family and friends there too, and it was really fun to see it up
It
on
was
the big
fun
screen.
to see it when you go over and there's Dan, the author of the book, crying and saying, it really, that really made us feel like we did the right thing. We didn't want to let him down. That's an important part of this is there's a lot of people who just love the book. And it was important for us to make sure that we served what the book told us and the story that the book told us.
Yeah, I've never had so many people come up to me and tell me how that when can I see it? Can I come to the premiere? This is a book that I've loved forever.
Yeah.
We've made a few movies and based on books, so this is it's exciting, and so to see it with the audience and see how they reacted is
It was very
it's fun.
rewarding. There is this element that we tend to forget because everything we see is in such a microcosm, right? Like we'll see anger and hate on television every day, all day. Part of that is because we have 24-hour news cycles and the internet. And what we don't see is that 99% of us get along every day and really wish the best for one another and try to work it out. We focus on the small sort of edges that really excite us, and it can drive a narrative that isn't particularly good. And we forget that we're all in this stew together, and our differences really aren't that much, and there aren't that many. We see what we're made of, and see that we're actually on each other's sides. And I think that this film reminds us that we're all in this together. To build these boats, and they have to be seaworthy, good boats. They have to really work. And so there was tons of things that were complicated about. Well, I mean, everything was authentic in terms of what the equipment these guys were using. They have these little wooden seats and these little plastic wheels. And so there was nothing state of the art for them that they could cheat and look better. Our kids were all wooden oars, wooden seats, everything it was tricky. She's an amazing, amazing production designer. She's, everywhere we went, the places were like, and she's building parts of the streets of Seattle in 1936, and you can't build it all out because we don't have the budget for it, and we don't have the ability to do that. So she was able to piece together and work with sort of the digital world in a way that was with Matt Casimir, in a way that was really important for us.
Trying to figure out how to make this stuff look exciting. I mean, it was a real challenge at first.
Yeah.
Once we figured out the language, then it was fun.
Yeah. But it took a while because, and Martin, we all worked on it. We saw different lenses, different angles, different And you know, it's it's just a math puzzle, really. But he's just a beautiful cinematographer. You know, the other thing we had is because we're shooting it in February, you know, so we're also having sunlight issues, whether, you know, it's light at 9 in the morning and dark at 4 in the afternoon. So we don't have a lot of time. And so it was on top of him being the incredible cinematographer. He's just a beautiful cinematographer. He also is, he understands what we're up against and he works quick.
I mean, the with Jen, who's does the costumes, and we've done a lot of films with her. You know, we don't have to worry. We know that everything is going to be authentic because she's such a stickler for the details, more so than we probably are. Um, and she just, she gets the period. She knows how to do it. She knows how to do it on a budget, which is important, to be able to do that. And everybody loves her, and everybody likes to be
Yeah.
around her, and that's a big part of the equation too.
When we do a temp score and we steal scores from other films and put it in, and then you see his score, you know, that's tied directly to the story. And, you know, there are themes that where there's a love theme for Callum and Hadley, and there's, you know, each of these characters has their own sort of theme music, and then there's sort of the great, you know, closing race music. Listen, Alexander's, you know, he's an Oscar winner. He's nominated, I think, every year. We've done 7 or 8 films with him. He's a dear friend. We spend a lot of time together. He's got a great sense of humor, but he also happens to be, you know, in my opinion, as good as anybody in the business. And you know, um, uh, he's a composer that I wouldn't want to do anything without him. The minute we started working with her, we thought, boy, she just really gets it. She understands the story. You know, you have to understand story. That's the main thing. You know, editors can always, you know, if you cut one scene together and it's really interesting and it works, but it tanks the movie, you know, there has to be a point of view. There has to be, and she always cuts with the idea of what the story is, where it's leading to. But what was really spectacular about this, and where I think people will pay a lot of attention to her skill set, is what she did with this final race. Because the final race is, you know, it's a bear. It's, I mean, it will be, you know, you'll be able to watch it and go, this is an incredible amount of editing, and her work in that is, you know, it was hard to do, and she did an amazing job.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and comment on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be notified when new videos are released.